Thank you, Ed. And good morning, everybody. You know, leaving Seattle to come to Tucson, Arizona has been a big adjustment, and people ask me often, so how's it going? And I usually respond with four colors: blue, green, brown, and yellow. I miss the large body of water, which blue represents. I miss the beautiful evergreen trees and the grass, which green represents, to come to the desert, which is the brown. And of course, how could you miss the yellow sunshine of the state of Arizona? But really, the most important piece that I tell folks is the transition couldn't have gone any better. The people of Tucson, Arizona are just some of the most fabulous individuals you'll meet anywhere in the United States and really across the world. So I've been asked to kind of talk about answering the following question: what does it mean to embrace an entrepreneurial mindset? And my response are 2 words and 1 acronym. But before I do that, Sheryl Sandberg, and all of you know who Sheryl Sandberg of Facebook is, she says, "Don't be afraid." So I say to all of you, don't be afraid when I say that the first word is salt. So what does salt have to do with education? Well, first of all, will higher education become the 21st century version of salt? If some of you have ever read the book, The History of Salt, I think you can appreciate some of the points I'll just reference very quickly. Salt, like education, is something everybody needs access to. It's very vital to our ongoing growth and development. As you know, at one point, salt was very expensive. People fought wars over salt. And thanks to technological changes over the centuries, salt now is on all of our tabletops. And how much is a can of Morton salt? But more importantly, how many folks remain in the salt-making business? That's why I say education may become the 21st century version of salt. It is too expensive, and everybody needs access. And now there are technologies in place that can drive down the cost. And I think everyone in this room, we must find a way to bring down the cost of education. If we do not do that, I fear that many of us in this room will no longer be in organizations, because someone, somewhere, some entrepreneur, somewhere will figure out how to bring that, and they are already there. Western Governors University, Straighter Line, and you get the idea. And even our very own Rio Salado here in Phoenix, Arizona. So, VOCA. How many of you have heard the acronym VOCA? Those of us who have been in the service, we understand that we live in a volatile, uncertain, complex, ambiguous world. If you don't know that by now, then I really highly encourage you to travel to other parts of the globe, because we do live in a VOCA world. And what's driving this VOCA world? Demographics, globalization, technology, and for many of our states across the country, the lack of support for higher education. So let me just say a little bit more about each one of those items. In the state of Arizona is quickly becoming a majority-minority state. In fact, in the city of Tucson, where I now live, it is already a majority-minority city. And each and every day, as you all know, 10,000 individuals are retiring. So who's going to be coming up to replace those folks? Well, it's not going to look like most of the folks in this room. We've got to find a way to educate our students of color. In fact, when you think about the millennial net generation, that is the most diverse generation of young folks coming through the pipeline. But another thing to keep in mind about the millennial nets, they only know a world in which the internet exists. And as you know, many of us did not grow up in a world during our formative years with such things as the internet, such things as Twitter or Facebook, and the list goes on. Globalization. I've had the good fortune to have grown up on 3 different continents. I've lived in communities that were impoverished, and I've gone back to that particular community in Korea, who is now no longer a poor country, used to be one of the poorest in the world. They're one of the countries that are leading this revolution. And I think we have to pay attention to what's going on outside of our borders. 95% of all customers do not live in the United States of America. They live outside of our borders. That represents a huge opportunity for us going forward, but we must develop a cultural competency to live and work in an environment that's completely different than the one we currently are in. Technology is revolutionizing everything we do. I always like to point out, I was in a recent conference where the gentleman held up the iPhone. Over 6 or 7 years ago, this thing didn't even exist. But think about how this has changed all of our lives now. If you don't have one of these, it's hard to stay connected in an interconnected world. But how is this driving a different way of thinking about teaching and learning is the more important question, but is also what I think is also the part of that disruption that will lead to education becoming the 21st century assault if we don't figure out a better way to go forward. And the other piece is funding. So let me showcase a few colleges that I think have taken an entrepreneurial mindset to address each one of these challenges. I'll start with Pima Community College, the college that I'm the chancellor of. We have an outstanding adult education program, and that program is designed to go out and reach out to the community of primarily our Latino community and re-engage them back into the educational pipeline. And so we reach out to over 5,000 to 6,000 individuals every year, and we are making a huge difference, whether it's family literacy or reading, writing, mathematics, or all the other pieces that are important to getting back into the higher education pipeline. But why is this important? Because if we don't educate the populations of color, our country will no longer be globally competitive. And so Pima Community College recognized this and stepped up to create a fabulous program as a bridge from less than high school equivalency into, and in many cases, many of those students not only go on to get their GEDs, they actually go on to college and to career programs. Globalization. How many of you think of your curriculum as intellectual property? And how many of you thought about taking your intellectual property and marketing that outside of the United States of America? That's exactly what we did at Shoreline Community College when I was the president. We looked at what are some of our major assets. And one of them is the Automotive Service Technology Program, one of the finest in the country, because we have strong partnerships directly with Honda, Toyota, General Motors, Chrysler, Hyundai, Kia. I can go on and on and on. That's not the point. We thought, how could we leverage this? So we took it to the largest car market in the world, China, because China is selling cars very fast, but what they haven't focused on is how to service those cars. So what if we could convince some of the colleges to really develop a very strong automotive service technology program? And that's exactly what we did at Shoreline Community College. So just as I left the college last year, in July of 2013, we had inked an agreement with 3 technical colleges in China to begin a train-the-trainer program for their faculty to learn to teach to the American standard. So keep in mind that opportunity to take your curriculum, your intellectual property, to points beyond the United States of America. Technology. As I mentioned earlier, I don't think there is a finer institution to highlight the deployment of technology to not only increase access, but keep the cost affordable. And that institution is right here in the state of Arizona and the city of Phoenix, Rio Salado. And their philosophy, among many, is one course, many sections. And as all of you know, they start a course, a section, every Monday. So amazing entrepreneurial spirit embedded there at Rio Salado College. And also I want to point to our neighbors south of Tucson in Sierra Vista, Cochise College. Some of you may or may not be aware that the aviation industry is going through major changes. One of those changes is this notion of unmanned flight. And before long, we're going to see airplanes hauling cargo with no pilots in the cockpit. And Cochise College is stepping up to partner with Airbus and General Dynamics and General Electric to start to address this new future. And one day, we're all going to be flying on airplanes without pilots. So those are examples of colleges stepping up and embracing the effectuation principles that Dr. Sarasvatsi has so eloquently put together. And I just will hit on them very quickly. And thank you, Dr. Sarasvatsi, for giving us a framework and a language, a science to entrepreneurship, a common logic. And she hits very quickly on, I'll mention these. Start with your means. And if you listen to the colleges I just mentioned to, that's, I believe, where they started. Set affordable losses. Leverage your contingencies. Form partnerships. All of us in this room, if there's one thing that we're really great at, it's forming partnerships. And then out of that, creating opportunities. So let me just close with the words of Steve Jobs. You can't connect the dots looking forward. You can only connect them looking backwards. So you have to trust that the dots will somehow connect in your future. I want to thank you and welcome to the great state of Arizona, and I look forward to getting to know all of you.
Lee, this is from NACCE, an appreciation for your work both at the local level, national level, and especially your support of NACCE. Thank you so much, sir.